Were you ever that one in a million? If so, what's your story? My university had this brutal attendance policy where missing more than 3 classes meant automatically failing the course. No exceptions. Not for illness, family emergencies, or even if you were literally dying. The policy was especially harsh in my calculus class, which met at 8 a.m. 3 times a week. I had a genetic condition that sometimes caused me to sleep for 16 to 20 hours straight. The episodes were random and medication barely helped. My doctor wrote letters explaining my condition, but Professor Abbott just smiled coldly and said, "Rules are rules. Perhaps you should consider a different university." The thing is, I had a full scholarship that required maintaining a 3.5 GPA. Failing calculus meant losing everything I'd worked for. I couldn't let that happen. One sleepless night, powered by energy drinks and desperation, I went through every university policy document I could find. In the Disability Services Handbook, buried in a footnote on page 47, I found something interesting. Students with documented medical conditions may utilize remote attendance options when such accommodations do not fundamentally alter course. Requirements. The next morning, I marched into the Disability Services office with my medical records. The coordinator, Nancy, was skeptical, but couldn't deny the policy existed. She reluctantly approved my accommodation request. Professor Abbott nearly burst a blood vessel when I handed him the official letter. "This is absurd. How can you participate in calculus remotely?" I pointed to the webcam already mounted in the classroom for recording lectures. "The equipment's already here. I just need to log in when I'm having an episode." He slammed his office door in my face. The next class, I had an episode and couldn't physically make it. I logged in through Zoom exactly at 8 a.m. Professor Abbott pretended I didn't exist. "I don't see Ryan in class today," he announced while taking attendance despite my face being projected on the classroom screen. I spoke up through the speakers. Present, the entire class erupted in laughter. Professor Abbott's face turned purple. "This is disrupting the learning environment," he snapped, reaching for the webcam. "Tampering with approved disability accommodations violates federal law," I said cheerfully. "That carries a minimum $10,000 fine per incident." He froze, hands still extended toward the camera. Words spread quickly. Soon, other students with chronic illnesses and disabilities started requesting similar accommodations. By midterm, nearly a quarter of the class had remote access approval. Professor Abbott became obsessed with finding ways to fail me. He'd call on me constantly, hoping to catch me unprepared, but I was always ready. Sometimes answering calculus questions while literally in my bed wearing pajamas. One morning, he thought he finally had me. "Ryan, please come to the board and solve this equation." I was remote that day. "I'm happy to solve it, but I can't physically come to the board since I'm attending virtually today." "Then I'll mark you absent," he said triumphantly. "Class participation is required." I shared my screen and solved the problem using a digital whiteboard, walking through each step while my work was projected onto the classroom screen. The class applauded. Professor Abbott escalated to the dean, arguing that my accommodation fundamentally altered the course. The dean, already dealing with a surge of similar requests, called a meeting with all parties. I came prepared with statistics. 23 students had perfect attendance after getting remote access approved. Test scores had improved. Plus, we now had recordings of every lecture, which helped everyone study better. The dean turned to Professor Abbott. "It seems the only thing being fundamentally altered is your outdated notion of what a classroom looks like." By next semester, the university had installed better cameras and microphones in every classroom. They marketed it as an innovative hybrid learning environment. Professor Abbott took early retirement. My university had this brutal attendance policy. Miss more than 3 classes, and you automatically failed. No exceptions. Not for illness, family emergencies, nothing. If you weren't in that seat, you didn't pass. It was bad enough in general. But in my 8 a.m. calculus class with Professor Abbott, it felt like a trap. Abbott was one of those old-school professors who thought suffering built character. He even told us on the first day, "I don't care why you're absent. My job isn't to babysit you. I have a genetic condition that causes me to sleep for 16 to 20 hours straight during random episodes. Medication barely helped." My doctor had written letters explaining it, but when I approached Abbott, he gave me this cold smile and said, "Rules are rules. Perhaps you should consider a different university." That wasn't an option. I was on a full scholarship tied to maintaining a 3.5 GPA. Failing calculus would cost me everything. One night, buzzing on caffeine and panic, I dug through every university policy I could find, buried in a single footnote in the Disability Services Handbook. Page 47. I found it. Students with documented medical conditions may utilize remote attendance options when such accommodations do not fundamentally alter course requirements. It was my lifeline. The next morning, I marched into disability services with my medical records. The coordinator, Nancy, was skeptical, but she couldn't deny the policy existed. By the end of the week, I had official approval to attend class remotely when my condition flared up. When I handed the letter to Abbott, his face turned crimson. "This is absurd. How can you participate in calculus remotely?" I pointed to the webcam already mounted in the room. "The equipment's already here. Just need to log in when I can't be physically present." He slammed his office door. The very next class, I had an episode. From bed, I logged into Zoom exactly at 8 a.m. My face was on the projector screen. Abbott started roll call. "I don't see Ryan in class today." "Present," I said over the speakers. The whole room laughed. He turned purple. "This is disrupting the learning environment. Tampering with approved disability accommodations violates federal law." I replied sweetly. "Minimum $10,000 fine per incident." He froze. Word spread like wildfire. Soon, other students with chronic illnesses started applying for the same accommodation. By midterms, nearly a quarter of the class was hybrid. Lecture recordings were available. Attendance skyrocketed. Test scores improved. Abbott hated it. He started calling on me constantly, hoping to catch me unprepared. But I studied harder than ever. I was answering calculus questions from bed, in pajamas with my cat asleep on my chest. One morning, he thought he had me cornered. "Ryan, come to the board and solve this equation." Remote that day. "Happy to solve it, but I can't physically come to the board." "Then I'll mark you absent. Class participation is required." So I shared my screen, solved it live on a digital whiteboard, and explained every step. The class erupted in applause. Abbott's eye twitched. He escalated to the dean, insisting my accommodation fundamentally altered the course. The dean called a meeting. Abbott showed up armed with papers. I showed up armed with data. 23 students now had perfect attendance. Average test scores increased by 14%. Every lecture was recorded, improving study outcomes. The dean looked at Abbott and said, "It seems the only thing being fundamentally altered. Here is your outdated notion of what a classroom looks like." By the next semester, the university rolled out cameras and microphones in every classroom, advertising it as an innovative hybrid learning model. Professor Abbott, he took early retirement, and me. I aced calculus, kept my scholarship, and graduated on time. 1 in a million. Maybe. But sometimes being that one means refusing to accept rules are rules. When the rules were broken to begin with, story 2, we only had 3 tickets, and she's more important. My dad said as they drove off with my ticket. I didn't reply. 4 days later, Grandma asked quietly, "Weren't you with them?" I sent $13,000 so you'd all go. I sent one voice memo. It was just their laughter. That night, her lawyer entered the chat with a PDF named Updated Document. They opened it, and then Grandma sent one screenshot. They pulled away slowly. I stood there on the driveway, watching the taillights disappear behind the hedge I'd helped them plant 3 summers ago. We only had 3 tickets, my dad had said, not looking at me. And she's more important. Then the engine started. No goodbye, no second glance. My ticket had been in his jacket pocket. I didn't say anything. Not because I didn't have words, but because the silence had been growing for years, and by then it was fluent. I watched them go, my sister in the front seat already posting to her story. My mom in the back, sunglasses on like it was a scene from a vacation ad, and her. My cousin's kid who suddenly really needed the break, smiling like he belonged more than I did. Maybe he did. The house was quiet when I walked back inside. I didn't bother unpacking. Just sat on the edge of the guest bed with the lights off and my hands still in my jacket pockets. The furnace clicked on. Somewhere down the hall, the dog whined behind a door. They'd even asked me to dog sit while they took my seat. But it wasn't the first time. That was the worst part. This wasn't new, just confirmation. I didn't rage. I didn't call them. I didn't post. I opened my banking app. I canceled the recurring transfer for the vacation fund. Then I paused the payment for my sister's car lease, the one I co-signed for. Then I logged into the event ticketing account, the one I used to book all our family things, removed every save profile. What? To clean, not to punish, to protect. 4 days later, Grandma called. She didn't accuse, she just asked. Her voice so soft it barely traveled through the speaker. Weren't you with them? I sent $13,000 so you'd all go. I didn't speak. Just opened the family group chat, scrolled past the photos of them laughing on the pier, hit record, sent a single voice memo. Their laughter. That night, a new number joined the family chat. It was labeled simply, James Holloway, attorney at law. He dropped a file, updated document. Then Grandma sent one screenshot. I didn't open the PDF, not at first. I knew what it was, knew what it meant. That's what made it hurt. Instead, I lay in bed that night, phone face down, screen buzzing with unread messages I didn't need to see. I stared at the ceiling fans spinning in slow circles like it was dragging time just to mock me. I should have been used to it by now, but this was different. This wasn't forgetting my birthday or not saving me a seat at dinner. This wasn't some passive-aggressive dig disguised as a joke. This was systemic, orchestrated, and sanctioned by the people I'd spent most of my life trying to protect. That voice message I sent, just their laughter, had triggered more than consequences. It triggered clarity. The first memory that hit wasn't even about them. It was me at 13 holding the door for my uncle while he carried in a TV I'd paid for with my summer job. They said it was for the family. I never touched the remote. Then I remembered the graduation gift they said got lost in the mail. The time. I offered to help plan Mom's birthday trip and got told no need. Your sister has it covered, only to find out later she used my credit card to book it. I wasn't a person in this family. I was infrastructure. I help. They forget. They celebrate. I show up. They exclude. This wasn't a series of bad moments. This was a system, and I was its power source. I started scrolling through my financial statements not to check balances, to trace the pattern. The streaming services, the recurring donations to charities I never picked, the medical bills they told me were temporary. Every single one in my name. I'd funded 3 vacations I never went on, covered utilities at a house I didn't live in, and footed the bill for a graduation party thrown for my cousin. The same one who told me last Christmas that I wasn't really family. Just lucky to be around. The worst part? I knew about most of it. I let it happen because I told myself that being useful was the only way to be included. Because they clapped when I paid the check, smiled when I fixed the Wi-Fi, laughed when I made the hard decisions, so they wouldn't have to. But they never asked how I was doing. Never once. Even when I broke my wrist and drove myself to the hospital because everyone was busy. Even when I skipped a vacation I'd planned for a year because they needed help covering emergency plumbing. Even when I missed Grandma's 80th because they forgot to tell me the time change. And still I kept showing up until this. Until they gave away my seat. Then smiled about it. Then used Grandma's money to do it. As if I didn't exist. As if. The only version of me they recognized was the one who knew how to say yes. I'll cover it. I opened my Photos app, searched airport, found the screenshot of the flight confirmation I never used. The one I booked the day after Mom cried about how tight money was. Then I opened the messages thread from my sister. Thanks for fronting the tickets. We'll pay you back as soon as taxes come in. That was 17 months ago. I scrolled back further, found the note from Dad. This cruise means a lot to your mother. Thank you for making it happen. I had paid for the cruise. I wasn't invited. The next memory punched harder. 3 years ago, Thanksgiving. I got stuck in traffic for 5 hours trying to get to dinner. Called ahead. No one picked up. Got there just in time for dessert. They'd already given away my seat to a friend from church. My plate was on the counter. Cold plastic wrap still on. Mom handed it to me like she was doing me a favor. I smiled, ate alone on the porch, took a photo of the sunset that I posted with the caption, "Grateful, I was lying." Back in the present, I reached for my laptop. I still hadn't opened the PDF. Didn't need to, because the truth had already landed like a bomb. They didn't just forget me. They extracted me, used me, and once I was emptied out, they replaced me. That wasn't neglect. That was strategic. That was someone in that house saying, "Let's not waste the ticket." And someone else replying, "He'll understand." They were right. I did understand, but not the way they hoped, because this wasn't just hurt feelings anymore. This was data, evidence, receipts, proof. I opened the family trust document. Still. Had access to the one I'd helped revise 2 years ago because no one understood the language. The one that required a unanimous vote to amend anything related to medical care or housing transfers. Guess whose signature was forged last winter? Then I logged into the group cloud drive where I kept all the tax docs, the one I set up for transparency. Scanned through upload history. Noticed 5 PDFs added in the past month. None of them by me. One was labeled Mom_Healthcare Directive, PDF. Another Vacation_Xpen Split_223.pdf. I opened it. The document listed all contributors under my name. 332,544. I didn't even know they went on that trip. The split showed my share of meals, lodging, and excursions. All calculated, all deducted from my account. They called it a gift. They counted it as a tax. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair, numb and electric at the same time. This wasn't rage. This was architecture. And the foundation was cracking. They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought I wouldn't question. They thought silence meant consent. They were wrong because I had one thing left. They didn't count on access. I didn't slam the laptop shut. I didn't curse. I didn't pace the room with fists clenched. I logged in. First, the shared banking dashboard. 5 accounts tied to my profile. 3 of them accessed daily by people who still called me too sensitive. I removed myself as authorized payer, set auto alerts for balance activity, and initiated an audit request. A full report of every debit from the last 18 months. It pinged to my inbox in 3 minutes. Next, the cell plan. I paid for it. 5 lines. Me, them, 2 cousins, and Grandma, who didn't know her data bill was covered by the person they left standing on the driveway. I logged into the admin portal, transferred ownership of their lines to my dad's email, gave them 72 hours to accept. After that, the numbers would be deleted. No warnings, no grace. Period. Then the subscriptions: Amazon Prime, Hulu, Netflix, YouTube TV, all running through my accounts, all tied to cards they didn't own. I deactivated every profile but mine, logged out every device, changed the passwords. 2 quotes they wouldn't understand. You said you didn't need me. Infrastructure deactivated. Laugh while it lasts. They could call tech support all they wanted. My name wasn't on file anymore. Next, the cloud storage. My company's license had covered their home system as a favor. Photos, legal docs, Grandma's medical scans, all stored in a folder labeled Shared Family Access. I suspended the account. Gave them 7 days to retrieve anything critical. Then it would be wiped. No backups. I wasn't deleting memories. I was reclaiming bandwidth. By midnight, I was on my 2nd cup of black coffee, writing the cleanest termination notice I've ever drafted. Subject: withdrawal of support, immediate effect. I attached documents, receipts, screenshots of forged approvals, evidence of my vacation contributions. I never consented 2 copies of my ticket to the trip I wasn't invited on. I CC'd Grandma. Then I CC'd her lawyer. That was the first real move because they thought this would stay small. That I would get over it. That I'd shake it off like I always. Didn't know I'd already reviewed the updated document? Grandma had rewritten the will, and now she knew everything. The real numbers, the real names, the real signatures. And the one voice memo I sent, just laughter, had opened the gate. By morning, I had 3 voicemails. One from my sister. Why? Are the phones not working? One from my mom. I think something's wrong with Netflix. And one from my dad. We need to talk. Call me back immediately. I didn't call back. I called the title company. I was still on the deed to the lake house. The family retreat that was booked out every summer like a vacation rental. I was the one who refinanced it. They never asked how, just assumed. I told the agent I wanted to initiate a title review. When she asked why, I said, misuse of trust, intentional exclusion, unapproved revenue. She paused. Do you want to revoke access? I smiled. Not yet. Let them sweat. By noon, I logged into the family calendar. You know the one? The Google Calendar we all use to coordinate birthdays, doctor appointments, reunions. I deleted every event I had created. Then I removed myself entirely. System error, invite revoked, access denied. Then I logged into the reservation portal for the cabin in the Rockies, canceled every booking, removed auto billing, and submitted a closure notice to the management team. I'd signed the lease. I paid the taxes, they furnished it, and called it theirs. I sold it, cash buyer closed in 48 hours. They didn't even know yet, but they'd find out when they showed up in August, and the keypad code didn't work. Then came the digital audit. Wrote a script that traced every IP login under my shared credentials across platforms. You'd be amazed what people access when they think they're entitled. Spotify, Kindle, Dropbox, my old project management dashboard, where they've been uploading Grandma's financial data to ask quick favors. I revoked every token, sent automated messages to all devices. This service was maintained by someone you forgot. Then I pulled the final string, the one they didn't even realize I had. Grandma's health directive, the one I'd helped digitize. When no one else knew what end-of-life planning meant, it was on a server they couldn't even name. And the PDF they thought was final. It wasn't. Not without my notarized signature. I hadn't given it. So when they tried to rush updates after Grandma got suspicious without telling her, I got an alert and I forwarded it directly to her, along with the access logs and the list of who signed what, when, and from which device. Then I sent one more file, a screenshot from my sister's phone, the one I accessed using a sync tool she never disabled. The caption read, "Can't believe we pulled it off. He's so easy to cut out." Underneath it, a photo of my seat, the one they gave away, the one that used to be mine. The silence lasted 12 hours. Then came the explosion. It started like a drizzle. Emails from my dad's account with no subject line. Missed calls from my mom that went to voicemail before the first ring ended. But by the next morning, it was a downpour of chaos. First, the group chat lit up like a dying power station. "You need to fix this now. Sister, how could you do this to us? Grandma's crying. You made her cry. Mom, we're your family. What you're doing is evil. Uncle Mike, this isn't just petty, it's malicious. Cousin Kayla, if anything happens to Grandma, that's on you." Then came the voicemails. 46 by noon. One from my mom began midsa. "We can't access anything. Her medical account is locked. Her prescriptions, her appointments gone. You did this? You did this?" Another from my sister. "You've always wanted to feel powerful, huh? Well, congratulations. You broke the family." Another message was from my aunt. "She's been pacing all morning. Won't eat. Won't sit. Do you even care what you've done?" But I didn't reply. Not once. Because I knew something they didn't. Grandma wasn't crying. She was watching. And she had the documents now. She knew who paid, who signed, who lied, and she had questions. I got a message from her lawyer just before lunch. "We've reviewed the trust, the medical directive, and your financial summaries. I believe Mrs. Holloway will be reaching out directly, privately." Then the real storm began. It wasn't just hysteria. It was panic masquerading as rage. They weren't grieving. They were calculating. Because for the first time, I had done what they never expected. I removed myself completely. No fights, no bargaining, just gone. And now they were screaming into the void, trying to pull me back in. The messages shifted tone throughout the day from guilt. "We didn't mean it like that. You're reading too much into things. Let's just talk this out, please," to threat. "If you don't fix this, you're out of the will. We'll take legal action. You've turned your back on your own family," to rewriting history. "You never contributed as much as you think. We only excluded you because we thought you didn't care. You've always been dramatic." One message from my dad was an actual Word document pasted into a text. "Michael, your behavior shows a concerning emotional response and lack of trust. We can no longer trust you with sensitive family matters. You are formally exiled from this household until further notice." Another message followed minutes later. This time from my uncle. "Whatever you told Grandma, it's poisoning her against us. She's shutting down conversations, sending cold texts, copying us on financial decisions we don't understand. You're driving a wedge into the heart of this family." I read that one while microwaving pasta. Didn't even blink. By nightfall, it became obvious. This wasn't about love. This wasn't about reconciliation. This was about loss of control. They were locked out of their systems, their funding, their cover stories. And suddenly, I wasn't the overreacting son anymore. I was the linchpin, and the linchpin had walked away. At 8:04 p.m., I received one more text from my mom. "What did you say to her?" That's when I knew Grandma had called them. That's when they realized the information floodgates had opened, and I wasn't the one holding the dam anymore. Later that night, I got a call from my cousin David, the only one who hadn't messaged me all day. He didn't even say hello. He just asked, "Is it true she updated everything?" I didn't confirm or deny. I just asked, "Did you know they used my ticket?" Silence. Then he said, "She said she didn't recognize them anymore. I've never heard her use that word before." And then she sent me a copy of the new file. He sounded shaken. Not because of the file, but because she meant it. Then he added, "She said she's tired of pretending that for years she watched them manipulate you, use you, laugh about it." At 10:11 p.m., I got a ping from the shared family email, which I no longer had access to, but forgot I'd installed alert tracking on months ago. The subject was re-updated document. The attachment was unopened. Then it was opened. Then it was forwarded to 26 people. Every cousin, every aunt, every uncle. Even Dad's college roommate. They'd open the file, and then Grandma sent one screenshot to the group chat. "He never asked for anything, but you took everything." Silence. Real silence. No replies, no rage, no emojis. They had seen the receipts. They had seen the numbers. They had seen the choice they made. And now they had to sit in it. No explanations, no control, and not even a spare key left to twist the narrative back in their favor. I'd removed myself so cleanly. The only thing left behind was the echo. I didn't post anything. Not on Instagram, not on LinkedIn, not on whatever family message threads still survived the implosion. I didn't need to. They'd already done the work for me. All I did was release the truth. No commentary, no opinion, just screenshots, receipts, documents. The forged signature on Grandma's healthcare directive. The financial log showing they booked the cruise on my emergency card. The group chat thread where they laughed about taking his ticket. The withdrawal confirmation from the family trust. The voice memo I'd sent Grandma. Their laughter, casual, loud, proud. I forwarded it all to one person, Grandma's lawyer, and then I gave consent for full release. He posted it to a public record Dropbox link with the caption "To whom it may concern." These documents were requested by Mrs. Holloway to clarify ownership, access, and decision-making integrity across family entities shared by legal authorization. Within 24 hours, the entire extended family had seen it. So I had 2 church members for business associates and my sister's ex-boyfriend who texted me. Wow, that explains a lot. The family PR engine collapsed under its own weight. My dad's friend from the Rotary Club left the board. Quietly, no message. My aunt's boss strongly recommended she take a leave of absence. My cousin's GoFundMe for unexpected housing costs dried up in 2 hours after people noticed her profile was tagged in a forwarded screenshot. He always covers things, no questions asked. My sister's fiancé called off the engagement. Said he needed someone who didn't treat generosity as a punching bag. My mom, she went silent until the subpoena landed. Grandma had launched a full audit of the trust. Not for vengeance, for clarity. Every dime tracked, every fake invoice, every unauthorized withdrawal. When they realized how far it would go, how many institutions would get copies, they didn't just panic. They reached out urgently. People stopped calling me dramatic, stopped asking if I was sure, if maybe I misunderstood, if perhaps I was being too harsh. They saw what I saw. I didn't just remove myself from the narrative. I exposed the script. The part where I pay and they take, where I stay silent and they write the story, where I make things work and they erase my name from the photo. That script was burned, now publicly. The cruise was refunded. Funds returned to my account. The family phone plan canceled. Their numbers deactivated. The shared property sold. Proceeds redirected to Grandma's medical care fund. The trust frozen. Pending forensic audit, I remained co-signer. My name cleared. My voice no longer borrowed. My presence no longer optional. But the biggest shift wasn't legal or financial. It was the silence, the permanent kind, not tension-filled, not guilt-laced, just ended. They didn't have anything else to say, nothing they could twist. And I didn't have anything left to give. Not explanations, not access, not forgiveness. Grandma called me 3 days later, just once. Her voice was calm, clear, steady. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner, but I see it now. She didn't cry. She didn't ask for peace. She just said, "You were never the problem. You were the proof." And then she added, "I've updated the will again. You're not just included, you're protected." That night, I stood on my porch, phone in hand, watching the sky shift from orange to blue to black. Not angry, not triumphant, just still. I had nothing left to say, because finally, they did the one thing I never expected. They stopped pretending, and I stopped apologizing for walking.